ready to begin. It is a little bit late. It's 6:35, and we'll come to order. I've been advised that we've started having closed caption coverage for our meetings effective tonight, so I would like to be sure to let everybody know that it's important to speak into your microphone so that that can be caught for closed caption.
Madam Chair, is this where we pull things from the consent calendar?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
But it's part of the announcements. I guess you could make that request now.
I would like to pull 8.5, 8.6. Thank you.
Could I ask if you have questions about them, or you want to just have a discussion about those items?
I do have questions and would like to have a discussion on something such as a blanket order for $300,000, what it is specifically, and it hasn't gone through the finance committee.
All right, thank you. So we'll move those. Are there any other requests?
Yes, I wanted to pull 8.2, blended at 8.5 and 6. Is that right?
Yes.
And 8.8. I had questions about 8.2 and comments about 8.8, and I agreed with the other two. I was going to request those also.
All right, so we'll move these items down to, do I see another?
I'd like to pull 8.7 as well.
Okay, so we will move those down to action items by motion in the order 8.2, 8.5, 8.6, 8.7, 8.8. We'll go under action items by motion. All right, I'd like to welcome everybody. I just want to make a few comments before we start, and it's about the fires, because we've all lived through a very difficult time. These devastating fires have affected our community tremendously, and they'll be part of our lives for many years to come. We mourn for all who lost their lives, have been harmed, lost loved ones and property, and we commit to doing what we can to help now and in the future. I want to recognize everyone in our community who's helped others during the crises: first responders, firefighters, law enforcement, public officials, neighbors, friends, and strangers. During these times, it's heartwarming to see so many coming together to assist and provide support and comfort. The concern for fellow human beings, their pets, and property reinforces our faith in human nature. The library's technology infrastructure went down immediately on the first night of the fires. A large number of staff had to be evacuated, and some branches were located in areas that had to be evacuated. Interim Director Gray worked tirelessly along with other staff members throughout the disaster, not only to assess the ability of the library to reopen, but to get the essential systems back online. She and others focused all efforts on the health and safety of staff, as well as the public, and on reopening the libraries as soon as possible. Throughout the crises, Director Gray's almost daily communications with staff and the commission were reassuring and served to calm everyone and bring the library community together. The library is loved and relied on by our residents, and we wish that we could have been open and available for Sonoma County during this terrible time. Unfortunately, it was not possible. We are so pleased to have everybody back, and we're so pleased to be back and functioning. I think I speak for the entire commission when I say how glad we are that you all are safe and that the library is back and running almost better than ever. So thank you to all of you who worked so hard to make that happen. Our sincerest gratitude. Are there any other comments or announcements? Okay. Any appearances by the public on items not on the agenda? Now is the time, and seeing no one coming forward. There are no library advisory boards or friends groups here tonight to share with us, but we do have a special presentation at item 5.1, Graphics for Sonoma County Library presentation. Ms. Greco.
It's up there, right? Oh, good. So I have a PDF presentation. I guess everyone sees it. Here. So what I'm going to do is give you one hand. And it talks about our library graphics services. Sure.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me tonight. It'll be 3 years in December that I've been here with the library. Boy, that went fast. And since I've been here, we've really tried to coordinate the branding, the look of the library, so that all of our marketing materials and everything in all the branches looks uniformed. And this last year, we had a designer, Patty Petita, came in, and with my counsel and her exquisite design skills, we rebranded the Sonoma County Library. And that's what you have on your first page, is our library logo, our brand with the tagline, Discover, Learn, and Share. And that went through quite a process. And then this year, I have to turn this on. This year, we had her come in. Let me see if I can get this bigger. Nope. We had her come in and help with the branding synopsis, so that anybody working with the logo, anyone in the branches, can take a look at how the brand should be used, the best way to use it, how it feels on the page, when to use the tagline, when to reverse it. And what's going to happen is our next phase of this is here in the graphics department. I have Lauren Carr, who's full-time now. Thank you all very much. And we're going to be creating templates. And these templates will be on a very big database program called Library Aware. So it's a national library program. It's a software that we use for marketing and bookmarks on a small scale. Well, my hope is to create these templates so that all the branches could just go in, and when we are not available to do something for them, that they could produce something, it'll all look the same. That's sort of plan B. But right now, what we're going to do is go over, let's see. Do you have me there? Let's see. Okay. So we're stylizing with a contemporary sans serif font, so everybody can use it whenever they need it on their computer. It's not really rigid that way, but it looks the best. I can't seem to keep going. Oh, here we go. So when you take a look at this page, it just shows the best use of the brand, the logo, with the tagline, without the tagline, and how all the library branches are listed. Their phone number, their address. We do bookmarks, we do flyers, we do large posters, and we're just trying to uniform our branding. Does that make sense to anybody? Okay, cool. I'll just kind of keep going. So we're calling these graphic standards. And then it shows how to use it when it's just type. And then we're always putting our URL, the website. No need for the www anymore. It's just sonomalibrary.org. For some reason, I can't seem to do this.
This way.
Point it this way.
Which way?
Towards this.
Towards this?
Towards the computer so that it can...
Oh, that way?
Sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, so these are other tips, and I've given this booklet to all the branch managers at a PSMT meeting about a month ago, and this just helps them with the visual. For some reason, I can't seem to do it.
Why don't you just turn to me and I'll
Sorry. Thanks. Operator error there. Okay, so the next page is, that'd be a lot easier. And our tagline. So the tagline went through the whole staff. The staff put in a lot of thought into that last year at our staff day, and we took in a lot of their input for the tagline and that. And then the next page is about graphic resources. And I just wanted to put it in here so all of you knew as well. We're an in-house print shop. We send things out. I could take anything to print. I have a background in architectural graphics, and we're trying to systemize our signage within the branches. There are new branches that don't need signage because they were built with signage, but there are other branches that do need some organization with signage. We do photograph archives. We've been building an archive of all the photographs that we're taking. We hired some professional photographers, and Angelina, our community coordinator, she's really been helping bring all that together so that it's available to all the branches as well, bringing in photographers going to the different branches. So this just kind of gives a little synopsis. And I don't know if any of you noticed, at our staff day, we had this beautiful display. It's been used at some of the conferences. I know Suzanne took this back east, and it's very handy. Kind of builds right up. It's very light, and we could change the the pictures on it anytime we want. So it's a beautiful display, and it looks really sharp when it's up. And then these are just FYI, the department equipment. I don't think people really know what we're using, and so I just thought I would give you a little example. We have a duplicator that prints, I think we run anywhere from 35,000 to 57,000 sheets on this machine. It's kind of like an old-fashioned, it's like, not an old-fashioned, a new mimeograph, if you remember those. It comes with a paper plate. I have 4 drums of color plus black, and it rips right through all of our forms that we do for the library. We have a brand new Toshiba 3-drawer color printer that's just been awesome. I'm not tying up materials management's copier anymore, so they still like me, thank God, because I used to hog it all the time. But now we have our own designated color printer. And then the plotter. The plotter was a dream come true when I started because we could print all of our posters in one sheet, and they've been really super. And we're able to do banners and other large marketing. And then we go to, so this is a standard form. If any of you ever need anything, or what I get from the departments is this form filled out with all the criteria of the projects that they want. And at kind of any given time, we probably have about 25 to 30 projects that are due. I think you all saw this sheet, which is sort of just a small snippet of what we're doing here at Graphics. We're doing large campaigns when there are system-wide projects. We had a really successful Open in May signage, and we went to all the branches. We had a sign out front. We've been really privileged to work with Kathy DeWeese in the children's department, and they've been doing the story walks in our local parks. So that's been really fun. We have them laminated. I think it's the Boy Scouts have built the frames, and they're up in the parks, and kids are able to read the story both in English and Spanish, and then walk along the trail and do things. And then over there to the right is just kind of one example of some of the fun things we've been doing in the children areas. I've got that big plotter, and we've been enlarging fun images for the children's areas just to make them creative, make them fun in the library. And then this is not in your packet, but we are right in the middle of our gratitude tree, kind of what you were talking about from everything that we've gone through, and this had already been in the works, so it seems to be really perfect timing. In all the branches, there's going to be a tree, and everyone is welcome to fill out a leaf and, help the gratitude trees grow, mentioning anything that they're grateful for. So I hope this was helpful. Any questions?
I don't have a question, but this is very helpful, and thank you very much for this report. I have to say that the Open Monday signs are very eye-catching. I didn't know that we did those in-house.
We did them in-house, and I went to that extra step, and we cut out the tops of all the letters to really make it stand out. So it was a little laborious, and ended up being really fun. So we did those in-house.
Commissioner Garcia?
And I'm happy that the person who works with you is working half-time. And what you two people are producing is almost more than what my experience was in the county print shop. Right. And I know you give them things once in a while, but this is really, and this also is very helpful to show the scope of what you do. Once again, you're just an example of one wonderful example of the incredible staff members that we have in the library.
Thank you so much. And Lauren Cart has just been approved to be full-time, thank goodness. So we have 2 full-time people in our graphics department, and it's not letting up. So thanks so much.
Commissioner McKenzie, you had a comment?
I'm sorry.
Yes, I had a question. There's a lot of really beautiful stuff, and I always really admire the big full-time posters, and so we can print those posters I can see on our own equipment at large.
We're doing that in the graphics department. Yes, ma'am.
I think there was some question along the line about there's so many programs going on now, and whether we're adequately able to even get the flyers ready for each one. And I know we're kind of making a shift to doing a lot of announcements of events online and through our website and stuff, but is there a current plan, vaguely in my mind, to do something about announcing our programs other than the individual half-sheet flyer? And
I'm really grateful to be part of the marketing team as well at the library. We have a core group, and the goal is we meet couple of times a month, is to look at the big branding projects that we have and to really research and discuss how well we can market those. Now, I do have a marketing background, I'm a branding specialist, and so we're working with Rano, we're working with IT, we're working with the branches, we're working with the digital team, we're working with the librarians, and we're doing the best that we can to supply them with not only just the graphics, but Angelina as well, we're creating, verbiage, messages, so that we're all saying the same thing, so that when they post on their social media, we can't do all 12 Facebook pages. But each branch does have someone that helps with those social media postings. Yeah. So now what we're going to do is coordinate and have the images and have the messaging and be able to support them so that when they are going past just something to hand out, that we're all saying the same thing and that we're all promoting programs the same way. So that is something that we're trudging along trying to get that together as well, because paper passing does not always suffice. Right. What we do on the website is very scheduled because it's usually system-wide, so you're not going to see a lot of banners, but we're trying to get the graphics when you go into the events calendar all to be uniformed. And again, it's hard because everyone has a computer and they do their own thing and they're creating things, but it's going to be really good when we have a key place so that everyone can go and we're all using the same imagery and the same messaging. That's what branding is. so that everyone knows in the library system what everyone's doing.
So will we be getting a presentation on that kind of updated marketing plan? And
That's it. You know, I could ask Angelina. We meet tomorrow, the marketing team. Let me just add that to our list. And because it's not really finalized, again, we have 12 branches. They've been doing things for a long time, but now what we'd like to do is gear everyone to going all in the same direction, rather than 12 places going in 12 different directions, if that makes sense.
yeah, there is also that aspect that people are looking locally to what's going on locally. And Commissioner Neff actually had a really good idea about having a separate web page for each branch that showed the individual activities by branch.
Well, we really are, we're much stronger together. We're much stronger on one website, in my opinion, so that when you go to one place, you're not having to be bounced somewhere else. And so it's all being developed. I know Rano and I try to work as much as possible on the website, the rebranding of the website, making it look easier, making it be easier. Those things that they do on the back end, you just have no idea. It's sort of like moving a mountain, interestingly enough, even in this day. So we are trying to get that so that when you go to a branch, you have more information on that link. But again, it would be better to have everyone go to this one URL and find everything there, rather than bouncing around.
I'm just talking from the user standpoint.
I am too. I do not like going to a website and being bounced 3 times. That's where I go somewhere else. So hopefully we can have everything scheduled on our website and have it more clear. And that's what we're working on. We're working on the layout. We're working on trying to make everything cleaner. We're trying to make this calendar looks 10 times better than it did, say, 6 months ago. So we really are managing that the best as we can. And it really does help when everything is in one place, because we look unified, in my opinion. Please.
Thank you. And Commissioner Neff, did you have a comment?
I was hoping for a one-page flyer that described all the internet services. Wenzer does book sales at the farmer's market. It'd be nice to say, here's all online stuff that you can do. Hoopla and all of the...
That is on my desk, sir. And we are under the direction of our interim director, with the help of Angelina, and again, the marketing team, all the branches. We have branch managers that are also looking at that. We're really trying to hone in on what's the most important information and pertinent for users, both system-wise and for the individual libraries, because I know every library has its own uniqueness, and it would be really nice to be able to promote that as well. But it would be good to do that in a uniformed manner. And so we're working on it. And we're working on handouts and things for the user, the services, and really and truly what Sonoma County Library is about, so that people can go one place and see it. And there are so many things that are happening in all the branches, I know. And we're trying very much to get those out. So that is a priority.
Okay, any other comments from...
I'd like to answer just the question about the marketing plan. So part of creating the new division manager that's on the agenda for tonight, the division manager of marketing, outreach, and events, that whole department, part of what stemmed from that is looking at the strategic plan and seeing the robust material about marketing and programming. So that whole division is going to, bringing that new division manager on is going to help with they're going to be charged with doing just that, and that Angelina will probably be working on a marketing plan under that new division manager. So that is a big goal for that new division.
Any comments from members of the staff or public?
So one thing I'd just like to point out on our webpage right now, we're we're on the Rohnert Park pages right now up here, and you can see the events for the next month are displayed in every, so if we look at every location, in this particular case, the pages for Rohnert Park, you'll see the events that are going to be taking place in the branch next, for the month of November. And each one of the pages, we are uniformly doing this. And then one of the projects that's on my plate and on the plate of IT, which is being worked on, are the flat panel displays that it's like a flat panel this size or maybe a little larger, depending on the location, that will display what's going on in the library that day and through the week and so forth and so on. And many of the library systems that I've worked in, we've done this. And the marketing team right now is working on this very issue. The computers have been purchased for the flat panel displays, and they'll be able to put up PowerPoint presentations. So if there's a unique event in Rohnert Park, or we want to advertise something that's going on like Founders Day or whatever, we'll be able to just be able to throw that up there with our branding and the the templates that are being created. So you can see this sort of cascading effect that's taking place. And really and truly, the days of paper, it's nice that we have brochures and things like that, but the bottom line is those end up more in the trash than you might imagine. And they work really hard on them, but they do work really hard on them, but this is, making sure that we have that standard look and feel.
Right.
Well, thank you for a very enlightening
much.
presentation.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Now we'll move on to item 6, Commissioner 6.1, Commissioner reports, starting at this far end with Commissioner Foxen.
Okay, first I'd like to thank all of those involved in supporting the community during the horrific events that had taken place last month. Of course, the first responders on the front lines are to be recognized, but behind them were the volunteers working to feed the people and help them get through evacuation and possible loss or actual loss of their homes. Then there are the virtually unrecognized county and city employees, and I'll include the library in that, and Vicki and Tracy and all the work they did, who manned emergency operations centers 24/7, working 12 to 16 to 18 hours a day to make sure the first responders were having their needs met with things such as fuel for their fire trucks, food, and a place to rest their heads for a couple of hours. And beyond managing these shelters that housed over 4,000 people at one point, making sure that they had beds and blankets, showers, food, and at one point, and necessities like clothing and toilet paper. There were also many other not very fancy jobs, like managing the paperwork to keep track of everything that was happening. None of them small jobs, most of them unrecognized jobs. Our city manager in Cloverdale, who handled the Cloverdale Emergency Operations Center, dismissed the thanks we gave him and his crew at a meeting yesterday, deferring to recognizing the volunteers. Vicki just did exactly that same thing. She says, "Oh no, that's my job." Yes, volunteers and first responders need to be recognized, but those in between, managing everything so that both of these components got their needs met, enabling them to maintain their specific focus, are equally essential and important. And whether it is required or not by their everyday jobs, they made it all come together and need to be recognized and thanked for their incredible job of keeping the panic down, seeing that needs were met, and organizing the reentry. So thank you to all of you from the bottom of my heart for your support and dedication to the community. Okay, now with that said, I've been staying close to home during this last month because I needed to keep my own home front sane and to keep my part of the library moving forward despite the upset created by fires. I worked on advocacy committee materials, continued working on the classes I'm taking through edX, and of course the SOPs. I had found a trustee manual, and I'm in the process of comparing the two documents. the SOPs that I've been writing and this document. I think I mentioned last time that it seemed we were coming up with a document that was really a handbook or a manual with standard operating procedures included. And when Tom Hauser read what I'd given him to review, he arrived at the same conclusion. I'm going to finish it, and then we can begin the finalizing and separation of the manual and the SOPs. Ultimately, we'll have more than we originally envisioned. I also went to an energy independence program given at the Cloverdale Library. I'd been hearing about it, of course, because Jane has been having to go out and do it, but I'd never gotten to see one that was being done. It was really informative. There was Doria Estrella, Lauren Lum, and Elliot Whitehurst from the County Energy and Sustainability Division, and they gave the audience lots of information concerning home energy upgrades, covering ways to do energy, water upgrades, considerations for going solar, financing options, incentives. But they also talked about the DIY kit. And they took it apart piece by piece and showed them each what was in the kit and kind of how to use it, what they got to keep and what they had to return. And I walked out of the room that night and it was already being checked out. So it was really kind of nice to see. I really enjoyed it. Anyway, and my final thing to say is that the Cloverdale Friends are meeting right now as we speak, and the Cloverdale Lab will be meeting on November 14th. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Heavenridge?
The Guerneville Lab will be meeting on Wednesday, so I don't have a report on the lab, but I do want to say a couple quick things. We were invited to the Sonoma State Library Makerspace, which was a lot of fun, and a lot of discussion how we want to do this for the library too, and be part of the Makerspace community. And I think we've talked about that, and I think there's bits and pieces in some of the libraries, and I think that'll be a great place to bring the community into the library. So I just wanted to, I was impressed by that. I'm also impressed by, I think this is coming from the head librarian there, but that we get invited to these things as commissioners, and as library people in general. So I think that's good. I think they're trying to reach out to the community more, and I'm glad to see so many commissioners took the time to go there. And the other thing I just want to say, I went to the Petaluma Library preschool reading session, and the children's librarian there came out in a penguin suit, which unfortunately the beak was interfering with her reading things, but that was okay. She was great. It was well attended, and I learned a lot. I was sitting in the back trying to be inconspicuous, but a couple of the kids wanted to sit with me for some reason. I don't know why, but it was a lot of fun. I was impressed. I just want to see some of these programs, so I'm starting to attend some of the things that are happening. Wearing my badge so they don't think I'm some weirdo that just walked in. So, yeah. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner McKenzie?
Yes, I, of course, add my thanks to the comments that have already been made by Commissioners Whistler and Foxen, and commend our staff, and in particular Director Tracy Gray, who I felt did keep a very calm hand on the tiller. And, this is talk about, jumping in and, have first time we've ever had a disaster like this that I know of, have been closed. And with the complexity of everything that was going on and all the branches and everything, anyway, I felt very, that you were really calmly leading everything forward, and thank you for that. And also want to thank our IT Director, Vicki Turbovich, because I know that she spent untold hours on the phones and trying to get everything up and working. And I don't want to overlook any other staff who made contributions while we're out. Somebody's pointing to facilities, and this Dave Tacheva and everything that he did, and getting all the branches cleared out of smoke. And anyway, there was a lot to it, and I really appreciate all of your efforts. I attended the Founders Day, which was before the craziness. That was on the Saturday, and we had a huge crowd. It was a very big success, and our branch manager did make kind of a nice flyer that we could use, but I second Commissioner Neff's comment about those kind of events. While we want to use online resources as much as we can, there's events that you just really have to have something to hand out. So that was a big success. And then I also attended the Makerspace at Sonoma State, and several of us did. It was really nice to be part of this kind of library world, and I agree that Sonoma State's doing a really good job to reach out. In part, I think, because of Hillary Smith, and also because we had our retreat over there. Did we do two? I think we did two over there. Last Saturday, I went down to the Taiko Drummers at Runner Park. It was just fantastic. It was just wonderful. It was 45 minutes of just total energy and whatever. It might have been a little loud as an event to have in a library, because I went in the library afterwards. There were a few comments, but anyway, I loved it. It was fantastic. It was a pretty good turnout also. And I did want to mention, Commissioner Fox is always talking about energy efficiency. There is a charging station in front of the Runner Park Library, and I've been noticing almost every time I'm down at the library, somebody's plugged in down there. So it really is getting more and more use, and I just thought I'd point that out. And our lab was canceled, was during the closure, so we'll meet again in December. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Neff?
The Wenzer lab meets next Tuesday, the 14th at 5 p.m. We were delayed a month due to the fire. I want to commend all the staff for getting the library back up and running, especially Vicki, because I know how hard that was. Our branch manager, Bill Coolidge, is moving over to Rincon Valley to be the branch manager, and I want to wish him well in his new position. I also attended the Sonoma State Makerspace presentation, and I'm lusting to get my hands on some of those toys, but I'm too old to be a student, so I guess that's out. And I went to the Discovery Day Science Fair at the Fairgrounds, which was Saturday a week ago, and there were thousands of eager kids with their parents looking at all the hands-on science exhibits there. That's all.
Thank you. Commissioner Garcia?
I don't know if I can add to the appreciation that other commissioners have already said, but I feel like the conductor of the symphony that I attended, when she looked at everybody and went, and this is what you should do, because every one of you who was also could have risked having their homes lost thought of the library first. And for that, I appreciate, and it's just like the conductor of a symphony, when everybody is to stand. And of course, the leadership of Tracy, and working from her home, I heard, and Vicki, who was in the bowels of the library trying to get it to work, and how much energy that took. The Santa Rosa lab itself will not meet again until November 29th. It feels like it's been years. And then the foundation meeting was canceled, just to let you know that, due to the fire. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Ebert?
I just want to say that I'm very proud to be affiliated with the Sonoma County Library, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner May?
I echo and add on to the thanks to everyone. One thing that I would like to add to the thanks is the, for lack of a better term, frontline people who have had to deal with, oh my gosh, I lost my book in the fire, is that okay? Anyway, just the fact that the library is a safe place for people to come after a tragedy like this, I think was reinforced through this. And also related to that, I almost never hear from people, but I did hear a lot of, why is the library closed? Which sort of indicated to me how much the library means to the citizens of this county. I also went to, and I know a lot of us have done this, but I went to a library when I was on a trip in Southern California. I went to the Manhattan Beach Library, and There were a couple of things that struck me. One of them was the teen room just drove me crazy because it's this glassed-in room that has this view, and it's really quite beautiful. And it led me to believe how important our refreshes are in terms of the sense of the new library. If we're presenting new libraries in old structures that look the same, we're not getting the message across, and environments matter. The other thing that was really impressive to me in Manhattan Beach was there was on this shelf a backpacky kind of thing on a program that's a program of the Los Angeles County Library System, and it's called U.S. Pathways to New Americans, and it's a packet that contains information regarding the road to citizenship, and it's this really nice little satchel kind of thing filled with, but it's apparently a program countywide in Los Angeles, and that was really cool. But again, thanks to everybody.
Thank you. Commissioner Hauser?
No report.
All right, so we'll move on to committee and liaison reports, item 6.2. And the first one is the Director Evaluation Committee, which I just want to report that the next meeting, we didn't have a meeting this last month, but our next meeting is our quarterly meeting in December, and I believe we're scheduled for a closed session with the whole commission with Interim Director Gray. So that will be on the December agenda. And then we go to 6.2.2, the Finance Committee report.
Yes, thank you. The Finance Committee met October the 30th in the library conference room. All the commissioners on the committee were there. Mackenzie, Whistler, Neff, Hauser, and Foxen, and the interim director and the CFO were also there. We had no members of the public show up. It was decided that I would continue as chair and Commissioner Neff would continue as vice chair until next August. Ken gave us an update on the Bartel study on the CalPERS rates and amounts. A contract has been signed to do this study by Bartel, but necessary numbers from 1992 through 2012 have not been received yet from CalPERS. So the study can't be done until these numbers are prepared by CalPERS. Anyway, Ken is going to stay on top of that and make sure that we get those numbers. The Measure Y Oversight Committee meets November 8th. That's tomorrow, actually, isn't it? I think. No, it's Wednesday. So we don't have any news to report out from that committee right now. The monthly reports were reviewed, and the possibility of modifying the reports to show both the sales tax and the property tax revenues and expenses on the same page was suggested by Commissioner Hauser. We're going to wait and see if the Measure Y committee would like to see things develop that way before we make any changes in our reports. No budget adjustments are anticipated at this point, according to Ken. The next budget process has already begun, with the management team setting its priorities as outreach, training, and marketing. And the division directors and branch managers are working on requests and goals for the next budget year. This information is due back on November 30th. In addition, 3 branch managers are serving on a committee to look at Friends contributions and their use for specific programs and materials. I know this has been an issue we've talked about here, so that's really good news. Ken reported that he had met with both the city and county officials, but it is too early to have any idea about the impact of the fires on both property tax and sales tax as of now. Of course, this is something that we're all concerned about. We discussed, in general, being conservative going forward especially until more is known. Then we looked at the commissioner's budget priorities. Everyone was to send me their priorities, their top 3. I compiled the list, and I have a couple of copies if anybody who was on the Finance Committee would like to see them. We hashed it out, tried to look at everybody's and pick the top 3 that were expressed by the most number of people. So equal weighting for these 3. And we are going to talk about it later, but they are long-term liabilities, having a plan to deal with OPEB and CalPERS projections over the next 9 years of the sales tax, capital improvements, and in particular facilities, and adding hours. Those are the top priorities expressed by all of us.
What was that last one?
Adding hours.
Okay.
There are a lot of different variations on adding hours, but we can talk about that a little more when we have this topic. And lastly, a list was compiled. Commissioners sent input on the hiring of a management consultant to work with us as a commission. Most of the responding commissioners did see a need, but only if there was a very clear focus. So after a lot of discussion, it was decided to put this on the back burner for right now, especially pending the addition of 2 new commissioners in the near future. One of the commissioners, I believe it was Commissioner Ebright, said that he could see having a consultant doing some team building when we got new folks. And also, since that time, Commissioner Foxen has sent out an email to all of us with listing priorities. And so she is going to be able to compile a list of commissioner priorities. So if you haven't seen that, you might want to print it out and get that back, get a response back to Commissioner Foxen. The next meeting, we've had to change the date. It'll be Monday, November 13th, which is next week at 2:30. So it's a change in the date and the time. So it's Monday, November 13th at 2:30 in the Central Library Conference Room. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And that takes us to item 6.2.3, the Advocacy Committee report.
Okay, we had to reschedule our original meeting because it was on the day the fire broke out, and I couldn't get down, that was for sure. Anyway, so we met on November 2nd. First thing we did was review the roles and responsibilities for the Advocacy and Public Relations Committee, and we're going to be adding language that incorporates legislative work more comprehensively, because what we're finding is we're looking into legislation more and more and getting more and more deeply involved in it. We're also addressing the makeup of the committee. The CFO is actually listed on there, and since that's kind of not really a good thing, not a good thing, I shouldn't say that, but a functional thing. We have the community coordinator coming to the meetings. We're switching those 2 out. So you're free now, Ken. I thought you'd appreciate that. And by the way, I don't know who makes these decisions, but I went to try and find the name community coordinator because I couldn't remember what Angelina's title actually was. And I couldn't seem to find her name anyplace on the website, and I thought maybe she might be included in the list of administration, just because if she's a community coordinator and somebody from the community is looking for a connection or a contact at the library, that might be an easy way to get to it. And I am not really great on computers, but that was the thing I thought. So just a suggestion. We're also considering, and we're going to bring it as a request to have it added to the next meeting, discussion of having non-commission members on the committees. Somebody who's been requested by the committee, approved by the commission, and appointed by the chair, very formal. But one of our members is going to be retiring from the commission in 2018, and they said that they would love to stay working with the Advocacy Committee. But of course, they wouldn't be on the commission. So we were trying to figure a way that it might make it possible for them to join the committee with everybody's approval and be part of it and continue with their knowledge and their enthusiasm, etc. They just don't have to come to these long commission meetings.
I think I could make a comment about that. I believe in the bylaws, we're allowed to have people from the public as appointed by the commission to committees. So we can double check that, but I believe it's already authorized.
I was part of the writing of the bylaws and I'd forgotten that. Good, thank you. And we're also taking off the fact that the chair election and officer election is in August, because by the time the committees are settled, August is often past. And this time I actually forgot about it. And anyway, so we're going to be electing our chair next time, and you'll find out who it is in December. So we did a brief update on the foundation and friends. Particular focus that came forward was a rethinking and consideration of our plans as a result of the fire and the economic changes made in our county and some of the cities. I know the Friends have been requesting to have a little more freedom with the way they spent their money at their particular libraries or the process that it went through. And I know they're trying to address that. But a lot of rethinking is going to be going on in the county. I'm sure that the CDC is going to be rethinking how they deal with Roseland. And now that it's part of Santa Rosa, actually, they're going to be part of that. So everybody's going to have to be readjusting. And with the horrific losses that the county and the cities have incurred, there's going to be a lot of readjustments. So number one, I'm sure that's going to make the SCA3 even more important. But we kind of need to look into this and look at how we might address some of these issues. And one of the suggestions that came up was a bookmobile, less expensive means of serving the whole of Roseland as well as the rest of the county. But as far as the Advocacy Committee is concerned, seeing a bookmobile that's really a library with real librarians on board, that's really lending books and really helping people, is an incredible thing to see driving down the road. And I know when I lived in Monterey, I worked on the bookmobile there, but when I drive around town and see the bookmobile at a time when I wasn't on it, you know, my heart just kind of jumped and I felt really good to see it out there doing work in the community. So that was the thought. It's also a lot less expensive than building a building at this point in time. But anyway, I know that's not our decision, but from the advocacy standpoint, great marketing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. We're also working in developing a statement in support of California as a sanctuary state and DACA, which I'm sure will be brought before the commission hopefully next time. We want to emphasize that the library is, based on equality and that all people are included without regard to immigration status. Tim talked some about the U.S. pathways for new Americans. That's not just in LA County. It happens to be in several libraries across the nation. Nashville, Tennessee was one that caught my eye. They have a fantastic program going. And in that Citizenship in a Bag, which Tim talked about, there's settlement information, but there's information on the naturalization process, study materials for the naturalization test, reference materials on rights and responsibilities of U.S. citizenship. There are media tools like DVDs and CDs. There are teaching guides and planning resources, flashcards, books, etc., etc. So it's really quite a fantastic thing that can be checked out and utilized for somebody who wants to make that step and move forward. As we get more information and confirm what's actually included, etc., and talk to some of the people down in LA County, because I'm going to call some of the librarians down there, like I did with the DIY kit when I first got that little nugget in my head. I'll find out more about it and I'll pass it on to all you wonderful librarians so you can see if it'll actually work in our library and it'll be of value to the people that we serve. We discussed the status of the national IMLS budget request. As far as we know, it's back in the budget. It's still staying in the budget. But I think we need to keep a close eye on it because who knows what will happen. It could be ripped right out without us even knowing. So we need to keep track of it. So I will keep my eye on it. And I will report on it every time. And I've lost my place in here. The SCA3 bill, I believe I told you, has been turned into a 2-year bill because they were unsure if it would pass or not. That's the 55% voting for capital improvements. just to remind you of what it is. We're making an appointment with somebody in McGuire's staff to find out what the process of passing a bill through is, what that bill will experience from this point forward, so that we can be very timely in our responses and in our feedback, as to pushing it through, etc. We also talked about other bills, some that don't directly affect us, but affect other libraries in the county, and we've thought maybe a letter or two in support of that, but not spending a lot of time with that would be a good thing. So as you see, we are getting more into this legislature stuff. We only touched on some talking points, and it was kind of tangentially that we hit them, especially as we were talking about the fire and the investment. And I think one thing we need to keep remembering is that for every dollar that a city or an entity invests in a library, $3 to $5 in direct returns goes back to that entity. So it's a good, solid investment. Then you add all the other community issues like access to computers, and people getting jobs, etc., the things we do with schools, etc., etc. Libraries are good investments, and I think we need to keep hitting this back to our JPAs time and time again, because it takes 3 to 5 times before it finally goes through. So we need to keep saying it, and that's from the psychologist in me. So, now that I've had Finance move their thing a little earlier, it turns out that virtually everybody on my committee can't be there on the 14th or whatever day that was. So we're meeting on the 20th, the 13th. So we're meeting on the 20th now. Yeah, we're flopping at 4 p.m. So thank you very much. Oh, one other thing. I did do the integration of the priorities that Helena did, the retreat list, goal list from June, and the accomplishments that I put together. So anybody who wants copies of that integrated, those 3 integrated lists, I've got them here. And I don't know if every commissioner has gotten one or not, but they're here. You can, yeah. Well, that's what you did. Yeah. So anyway, there you go.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that report. And that takes us to Foundation Liaison, which there's no report because there was no meeting. The next meeting is on November 15th. And then 6.2.5, ad hoc OPEB/retirement will be meeting on the 14th of this month. And I believe the actuarial report has been returned with the 3 scenarios that the committee had put forward. So more to be reported on that probably next time. 6.2.6, the ad hoc standard operating procedures. Commissioner Foxen has been working on that, and we should be able to see more of that possibly next month. 6.2.7, Measure-wide oversight will be meeting on the 8th of November, so there's no report on that at this point. And then the 6.2.8, the ad hoc director search committee met this afternoon. We had issued a request for proposal. We received 2 proposals back, and we have since sent each of those companies additional questions. So our next step will be to do interviews, probably Zoom interviews that I'll need to talk to our IT manager, Vicki Turbovich, to help set up. But I'll get together with you either on the phone or by email. And that's all of the reports. Any comments or questions from anyone else? Seeing none. Item 7, correspondence and press coverage. Or any comments or questions about that? Okay. And that takes us to item 8, the consent calendar. But I want to also point out that that clock is not right. So even though for a minute I thought it was 8:30 already, I was relieved that it's only 7:35. So on the consent calendar, there are 5 items remaining on the consent calendar. One is 8.1, the regular meeting minutes from October 2nd, 2017. 8.3, approval of revised represented salary schedule and job description for human resource specialist. 8.4, approve revised 2018 library closure schedule. Item 8.9, approve request to allow subordination of the library's pass-through payment. 8.10, approve the petty cash amount for the library system. So that is on the consent calendar. We are moving 8.2, 8.5, 8.6, 8.7, and 8.8 down to actions by motion. So
I would like to remove, sorry about this, I think it's 8.3. 8.2.2 is already, never mind, that's already removed. Thank you.
8.3 has already been moved.
8.2.2.
So, what? There's no 8.2.2.
8.2.
You want to
document is
remove?
8.2.2.
8.2 has been removed, yes. 8.3 is on the consent calendar.
I'd like to remove 8.3. I just have a question.
And I saw Commissioner Hauser's hand.
I'll move approval of the remaining items on the consent calendar.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay, so ordered. So approved. All right. So now that takes us down to item 9, discussion items. Interim Director Gray's report. We'll start with that.
Okay, thank you. In addition to the written report, I also want to publicly acknowledge the OMT for their support during the fire emergency. It was a great team effort. I commend every one of them that are in this room, that the work they did both for the library and outside in the community, as well as supporting me. I will never forget that Monday morning. Dave and Jaylene both called and texted me about what was happening, and it was a really quick decision of what to do. I live in Santa Rosa, so I was also packing as I was trying to figure out what to do for the libraries. So I want to thank them. It was a quick decision that day, and then every day was a thorough analysis of the status of the safety of our staff, the safety of our community. There was a lot that went into the decision making. I want to thank Commissioner Whistler for, I know we communicated in various ways by what was working at the moment, so which cell phone. I joked with my husband and I told him our living room was Library Operation Center, and he was to deal with our family who was also calling me several times a day. I said, "You're on family duty, I'm on work duty," and he gets brownie points for my family for talking to my mom several times. I want to thank Dave and his staff and Ken, who were visiting the branches several times through those 10 days, checking on the status, the smoke. I know some of Dave's staff were still working throughout that, and just checking on everything. So I want to thank Dave and Ken for that. Some of our OMT were also evacuated more than once, and near evacuation or on the border of evacuation. So all through that, while dealing with their own personal emergencies, we're stepping in to help with the libraries at the same time. I want to thank Suzanne for jumping in with all of the HR issues. She brought it to my attention. We need to pay people, and that was so important. So while she was instrumental in helping in getting that. And I wanted to thank Catherine Hess, our payroll coordinator, and Leilani Renia Viale, who just came on board in HR, but also used to work here in payroll. So they came in the Monday before we opened to help with payroll, and all of the OMT came in that day. We met 2 days later as well. Even though, as I've said, everybody was struggling with their own personal evacuation issues, but everyone came in. I know Jamie brought her adult children to watch Kathy DeWeese's young children so that we could meet because schools were closed. So people who had, our staff who had kids. So that was really true teamwork and getting everyone paid without having anybody's current phone numbers because our systems were all down. John Hopt, one of our branch managers from Healdsburg, who texted me and said, can I start a private Facebook page to communicate? So it turned out because I was communicating with my personal phone and email and this Facebook page to communicate to staff. So a lot of creative thinking and out-of-the-box thinking during all of this. I know Q had called the branch managers and so many staff to get everybody paid and get the proper hours in. So I want to thank collectively the OMT for really stepping in. And then Vicki, especially for the huge IT issues that we were faced for the 10 days. She was purely instrumental, and she's an example of tenacity of making it work and was trying everything and anything with anyone she knew and all of her connections in IT to get us up and running. I'll never forget the Tuesday before we had the staff come back. She called me at 11:30 at night and said, exclaiming, our email is up, our email is up. And we were both literally jumping up and down on the phone, just celebrating that she got it working. So, of course, we both stayed up late that day to go through emails. But the Wednesday that we opened, we did a video chat with all of the staff and wanted to collectively, the OMT met the day before, we wanted the same communication to go to everybody. So we all had we had the talking points to give to staff, to give to the public if they had asked questions. So we were all on the same page, and we were there to answer any questions. There were a lot of logistical questions with IT, with checkout, that several of the OMT answered. So the OMT also, the day that staff came back, each of us all went to a branch or more than one to check on staff and to just be there. I remember at Central, I stood at the door and just welcomed everyone back, and I've never seen people more happy to be at work. It was really great to see. And then just getting out to all the branches, I was able to visit all but two in those first few days after we opened, to talk to staff and just the support that everybody had with each other and with the community. And one of the commissioners mentioned people were actually coming in saying, I'm so sorry about our books that were destroyed, that I wouldn't think that was on the first of their list, but we did have that. And some of the staff in the branches set up tables of thank you and gratitude trees, and they had food for each other, and it was really, I think, as it made me be very proud of working for Sonoma County Library. So I just want to say that. We are collecting, Jamie is collecting our materials lost. We're probably looking at a couple thousand items. Ken is looking at our insurance company for a claim as far as to get reimbursement from that if we can do that. And I think it's probably about 2,000 items now that have been destroyed. So we are working on that. I want to also say we had a huge support from neighboring libraries, from some of our vendors who reached out asking what they can do, what our neighboring librarian could do. And then when I was at the California Library Conference this past week meeting, anytime I met someone new and I said I was from Sonoma County, they wanted to hug me. So the outpour from our colleagues in the library land everywhere, it's been great to see. So on to the California Library Association conference. So I just got back yesterday it was in Riverside. It's the annual State Library Conference. There were 6 other staff who attended: John Hopt, Angelina Cassiopo, Caitlin Yeager, Children's Librarian, Tiffany Bronson, Children's Librarian, Simone Yingst, Adult Librarian, and Charity Anderson, Children's Librarian. It was over this weekend. The annual California County Librarians meeting also happened to be during the meeting. It was after the pre-conference day in that evening. It's an annual meeting. It's an organization that we belong, and the state librarian was there to answer some questions, and I will report some more details to the advocacy committee. One of the themes of the conference, I felt through our keynote speakers, was advocacy for libraries. One of the keynotes was John Chang, the state treasurer. He talked about the federal tax and the effects it has for California. And he's a strong library supporter, which is great. And his focus was on advocating for libraries in every way you can to whomever you can, especially those that have the capacity to make the changes and make the decisions. So it was really great to hear that, but I'll share more details with the advocacy committee on that. I was able to attend the Directors Forum reception. I met the Napa County Library Director. We did hug for a while. We had what she called a therapy session of getting through the tragedy. So it was really great to meet her and talk about their experience, our experience. As OMT has already talked when we met about what we've learned from this and what we can improve. I know HR is working on a communication, an updated phone sheet and so forth, so that we have it in print form, because if you have your emergency contacts in your computer, you can't get to your computer. So having paper copies is good for some things. One of the pre-conference, it was an all-day session on data, which can sound really boring, but it was really good, of using data to advocate and to explain why you need certain things. I'm a big advocate of data and statistics. And then a really interesting session was called Free Your Fines, about 3 libraries who have gotten rid of fines or gotten rid of fines for their children's card holders and so forth. And that was a really interesting session. There will probably be a discussion coming up in one of the next few commission meetings. I know the branch managers have worked on a proposal of a change to our fines and when we block cards and so forth. So anyway, that was good to hear. San Diego Public Library doesn't have fines. One of the interesting things, what they did with data and statistics, because they have to report to the city, is they did an analysis of staff time and what it costs. Everything from taking money, counting tills, having the blue bags counted, to going to the bank, etc. And when they analyzed it, it actually cost them more to collect fines. They said something like it cost them $1.1 million to collect fines, and they only get $600,000 a year in fines. So it didn't make sense fiscally. So I thought that was really interesting. And then Angelina and I were both at a session on Staff Development Day, and interesting creative ways about staff development, and the focus was food. It's pretty universal regardless of what you have for food on Staff Day, but there were some interesting ideas that we both took away from that. And then a session on dealing with change that happens, and then there were a keynote on women in politics and running, and then Lindy West, author and writer, who spoke about politics and advocacy for libraries. That seemed to be the theme. And then there was a question and answer session with the state librarian, and he focused on that as well, on the Q&A and so forth of what's happening in the state library. So those were the highlights of the conference. Another update, just to let you all know, our legal request for proposal closes this Friday. So we'll be working on getting that counsel because our contract with the county expires the end of December. So we hope to bring a proposal to you all at the next meeting. And then Jaylene, I have to say, worked just so swiftly, and so she was so organized and did a great job leading the state library report. She will be presenting that at the December meeting. And I remember telling her after the fire, please call the state library, ask for an extension. I'm sure they would. And she said, oh, I'll get it done. I don't need it. And she just worked endlessly with the staff throughout the library system and did a great job getting that. So we'll have that report for you next month. And then lastly, just to reiterate, you probably got an email invite, but Keo's retirement party is this Friday evening at Central, beginning at 6:30 p.m. So I hope to see you all there. And that's it for my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments for Director Gregg? Commissioner McKenzie?
I had a number, but I'll restrain myself and just ask a couple. I see that there are further discussions about the Roseland project, and if not tonight, if you could give us an update on Roseland, I appreciate it.
Sure, I can give you actually an update right now. So we were supposed to have a meeting the week of the fires with the Community Development Commission director. That was postponed. Jaylene's reached out to them and she's trying to work out a schedule to have the meeting with them in the Boys and Girls Club. When we met, Commissioner Whistler and I we met with them in the Boys and Girls Club and Supervisor Hopkins the beginning of October, and there was the staff member who was leading the project had just left. Yeah. So they were regrouping to give us an update, so we're working on an update on getting a meeting for an update on that project and where the library stands. I haven't received any communication lately from the Roseland Coalition, but I know we're keeping them informed as well.
Okay. My other two real quickies, I'm really pleased that you're working on an updated strategic plan. And I'm also see that I identified a temporary library site for Northwest, but it doesn't say where it is.
Oh, sure. So Dave's been working on getting that location, and I'm not sure if that is secured. I'll have Dave give an update in the management report on that location. And then the strategic plan, yes, the OMT spent an hour and a half going line by line through the strategic plan, an update on where we are in the status, and we can provide that for you in the next month's packet as an update.
Thank you.
Great. Commissioner May.
Yes, a couple of things from the report. First of all, there's two things that you didn't mention in the extensive thank yous, but I think the fact that 35 staff members used the assistance program just shows really wonderful compassion and the fact of how it was needed. And then sometime it would be interesting to hear the whole story about the county archives and Barbara's role and your role in keeping the fire at bay. I understand it was almost on the property.
I have it written in my notes. I knew I have it right here. I wanted to publicly thank Commissioner McKenzie because I got a call. It was when, and I'll be brief on the story, but I'll give you the longer version later. When the winds and everything shifted, and Dave had given us a great website that had where the fires were located, a topographic map, and they were literally 100 yards from the archives. And Catherine called me and our history and genealogy manager, frantic about the archives and so forth. So we talked, what do we do? We were shouting out names, all the names I had. I didn't have their phone numbers because our system was all down. But I said, I have Commissioner McKenzie. She's well connected. She knows so many people. So I called her, and she was instrumental in reaching out to the people who we needed to know to get to. So she got us connected to the right people. Catherine drove up from Petaluma, grabbed me. We went to the Emergency Operations Center, handed them the map of the archives, and told them. In the meantime, the word did get spread out to CAL FIRE that those were there. So it was on their radar. And luckily, Catherine's been out there a couple times. There was some smoke damage, but so far none of the materials that she has seen have been damaged, luckily. So yes, thank you. And thank you, Commissioner McKenzie, for that.
Right, thank you. And the other thing that I want to say is, and I won't be overly political, but the Together at the Table program seems to me to be so urgent, so important. And I'm just hoping or wishing that there was a whole lot of publicity about it, that an article in the paper, perhaps inviting a reporter, something, because I think the fact of being able to speak across the table to people with different views is so very important. And the fact that the library is instrumental in doing this has been one of my dreams about the library since last November. So thank you, but I will be interested in hearing how well they're attended, etc. Thanks for that program.
All right, any other questions or comments about the written monthly activities report?
I'd only say that I second what Commissioner May was talking about around the table. We have the new dates, but it doesn't say the location, so I wasn't sure where they're going to be. And also, I think this would be a great Chris Smith article in the Press Democrat. I'd be happy to contact him.
Right, I think that locations are to be determined. Okay. That's what the website said. But
the locations are set. The dates are to be
determined. Okay. Commissioner Neff, you had a comment? Okay. Any other questions or comments about the monthly activities report? Commissioner May?
I noticed, I'm really excited about the textbook collection. Is there any involvement with the junior college in the textbook collection?
Can you state what page you're looking at for this information?
Page 74 of the...
So far, we've been primarily talking with high schools, and it's really been based on a relationship with the school and developing an MOU with a specific school to have them donate textbooks to this collection. Some branches like Wenzer are like, we can't, even if they wanted to, we have no space for it.
Right.
In terms of the JC, we haven't reached out to them. We were really focusing on high schools to start, and then we were going to, maybe expand that as the collection grew. The mechanism is in place now. We have a couple branches who are piloting it, or it's available to any branch to build those relationships. But, but so far, just high schools.
I know that college textbooks are a huge expense. So.
All right. Well, thanks again for a great report. And again, it's always amazing to hear everything that's going on. So I think it's an item that I always direct people to look at if they look at nothing else in the commission packet, the public, when they go to the website, to check out the management activities report. So that takes us to item 9.2.2, the monthly financial report. Are there any comments or questions about this report? Commissioner Garcia?
My comment is that currently the County of Sonoma is looking at a 5% decrease in their budget, and also the possibility of a hiring freeze. We'll know more about that next week. That comes from the tax assessor's office, and that we need to be aware of that as we go forward, that the Y money and the tax money may not be there as we projected, and when we look at expenditures, we should be looking to know the resources are going to go down.
I think that Ken has been in touch with the county, and he's waiting for an update from them. So we'll have more information on that definitely before the budget workshop. Okay, thank you for that question, or comment. Any other? Commissioner May.
Yes. Do you have any idea about when you're going to be hearing from the county?
I'd just like to get a The short answer is no.
Okay.
I mean, in the Press Democrat today, they said that they were sending teams of assessors out to actually see what properties have been affected. And so it's going to be a process. You can sit there and say that 3% of the houses in the county, and these are all estimates, may have went under or been affected. But at the same time, when you're looking at Fountain Grove, you're looking at property that the value is huge. So it's going to take them time to figure it out. But
okay, and related to that, as we're thinking about this, my question is, as we're looking to try to deal with whatever financial downward trend we have, is it feasible to think about also looking at the fund balance to some degree, since part of what a fund balance is all about is to handle catastrophes? That's just a statement, maybe more than a question.
Okay, this is kind of an out there question. We can discuss it.
Yeah, I mean, the fund balance is there. It's
Yeah.
fairly large. We've talked about it before. There are certain things that we're looking at it for, but yes, it's correct. It's also for that.
Any other questions or comments while Ken is up at the podium? See none. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ken. So that takes us to item 9.3, Commission Priorities for 2018-2019 Budget. And we go back to Commissioner McKenzie for more detail on this.
I don't really have much more of a report. Again, the three in equal priority, equal weighted, are long-term liabilities. It was pointed out by at least one member of our OPEB committee that we have, quote, 10 years to get healthy, and because the life of the sales tax measure, well, now we have 9 more, so I think we really want to have a plan to deal with that, and also to deal with whatever these CalPERS projections are when we see our Bartel study, which is just supposed to be more specific, and so anyway, that's the first of 3 equals. The capital improvements, we had quite a discussion about the whole issue of leases, and that some facilities have leases and some don't, and some leases say one thing and say another, and so forth. But in general, whether we have put aside enough money to gussy up all the facilities in somewhat faster fashion maybe than our current facilities plan. Commissioner May made a point earlier about the environment is important in terms of thinking of it as a new library. And so anyway, just putting aside more money for capital improvements. The Finance Committee is, at its next meeting, going to be looking at the issue of these leases. And I also got a good suggestion after the meeting from Commissioner Hauser, who was talking about possibly having a subcommittee look at detail at all the leases. And I don't know how you felt about that still. Did you want to comment on that?
We'll be discussing it. I don't have any comment.
Okay. Just wanted to give you the chance. So, and then thirdly, adding hours. And again, a lot of commissioners mentioned the Saturdays, and it looks like we're going to be able to do Saturdays with not too much expense. My understanding is not staff expense. It will be, operational expense like, energy costs and so forth. So that will be doable. Is that on tonight's agenda? I think it is. This is April. Yeah. And then the other hours, it was kind of all over the place, whether we wanted to add, every evening and, Sundays at every branch and, that kind of stuff. So anyway, just in a general sense, adding hours. My understanding is that staff's going to be bringing back some projected cost for the different varieties of adding hours at a later time. But anyway, those were the Finance Committee's strong recommendations that based on what everybody commented, that those be our priorities as this budget process goes forward. Again, I have a synopsis if anybody who's not on the committee would like to see it.
All right, so Commissioner Hauser.
Yeah, I'd like to make a couple of comments generally. First, the long-term liabilities we were talking about were the OPEB and the CalPERS specifically, that we need to look at those two this year and come up with a plan. And then the idea for a long-term, I think we actually kind of set a 10-year projection for capital improvements. And it wasn't just limited to branch refreshes. It would include bookmobiles. There are a lot of ideas that were out there for other types of capital improvements. New computers in different places, classroom space, technology updates, things like that. So I think the idea was that we should have a 10-year projection of how we think we might be spending money for capital aspects. And then on the extra hours, I think it was clear that everybody agreed we want the 8 hours on Saturday, which is what we're planning on working on here. But I think the next part of that would be the weekday evenings in some way that conforms to the customer study that Angelina did. So I'd say the extra library hours, you have Saturday hours, and then look at the possibility of weekday evenings. The long-term liabilities would be dealing with OPEB and CalPERS, and then it's a 10-year projection for all kinds of capital improvements. So we can look at that and actually keep updating that from year to year to see where we're going. Thank you.
All right, any other comments about this? Thank you for that. And that takes us to item 10, action items by motion. And I'd like to go ahead and...
Are we supposed to take some action on that, or are we just discussing it?
Just discussion.
Okay.
Action items.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the priorities.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well...
Okay, so...
Okay, then my next question is, if we're not taking action tonight, when do we define what it is so staff knows so they can start planning the budget? That's my concern. Ken wants that. He wants it now.
Well, could we just we've established what everyone, this was everybody's input, and that's where we came to. And maybe we could do a thumbs up or down on,
Right, I think that's a, sorry about that. I'm trying to get through the agenda. But, yeah, so the Finance Committee came up with the 3 top priorities based on the comments that had been sent to Commissioner McKenzie as the chair of the Finance Committee. So are there, do the rest of the commissioners, I mean, the Finance Committee agreed that those were the 3 top priorities, but now is the opportunity to hear from other commissioners as to whether or not you are in agreement with those priorities. But I had no comments, so Commissioner May.
The only one, and I'm willing to put it aside, but one that I added that didn't get on the list is the idea of more staffing at the branches. Basically, also because we're increasing program and activities, and we're asking the same number of people to do that more. So that's another item that was on mine, but I'm okay if...
Well, could we clarify that with Director Gray about the staffing? Because some staffing has been hired to handle the additional programming and hours, I believe. So I'm not exactly sure. Could you maybe clarify what you're thinking about that? Because we just hired, 30.
I'm just thinking, not necessarily the management staffing. I'm
not talking about management staffing either. I'm talking about line staffing that we're still in the process of hiring, but have been hiring.
Right. We have about 15 open public service staff. Right now, they're in the process of reviewing applications right now. Those were staffing that were approved in this fiscal's budget.
Okay.
So the Saturday hours will include the current staff, and then any additional public service staffing will go along in the budget process for next year's budget if you came back and said we want to be open these hours or so forth.
So I think that we felt like that was still in process. So
okay.
But thank you for bringing that up and clarifying. We can clarify that. Any other members of the commission? Do you want to take a thumbs up, thumbs down on these as being the top priorities? Make sure we're all in agreement. So we have the 3 priorities that Tom spoke about just a minute ago, clarifying. I know you brought it up, but I'm just saying that he just repeated it.
Okay.
I don't know. So we all have a unanimous thumbs up on those being the top priorities for the commission's input on the budget. Is that helpful? Does this help the budget process? Okay. Okay. Thank you. All right. So I guess we'll be talking about this in more detail, about how to approach these issues and what part of the budget can be directed here and when. All right, are we good to move on? Okay. Thank you all for your patience. And that takes us to item 10, action items by motion. So I would like us to take care of items 10.1 and 10.2 and then go back and pick up the items that were moved down from the consent calendar.
So I move.
On item 10.1?
And 10.2, but right now we're on 10.1. I so move. Do I have a second?
Second. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay.
And I so move 10.2.
10.2.
Second.
And so that's Commissioner Garcia and Commissioner Ebright. Did you get the ones for 10.2? Who? So Commissioner Garcia, and then who seconded?
I did, Barbara.
Commissioner McKenzie on 10.2 seconded.
No, 10.1
I'm sorry, 10.1. And then Commissioner Ebright on 10.2. Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, unanimous. Thank you. All right, so let's. We were asked to move item 8.2, 8.3, 8.5, 8.6, 8.7, 8.8. So, and I forget at this point who asked them to be removed, so would the commissioner who requested they be removed like to, I guess we need a motion though first, and a second, and then we can have a discussion.
Well, I'll move, I asked it to be pulled, so I'll move for discussion. Adoption of agenda item 8.2.
Okay, I second.
I'll second. Okay.
I second.
Okay.
So Commissioner McKenzie and I seconded.
So my question was, and I talked briefly to our interim director this afternoon, the annual maximum salary is $128,274, and my question was based on the steps. If someone, for example, within the system applied and got this job, would they necessarily start at step one? Does everybody have to start at the bottom step? And her response was there's some flexibility in there. So this number of 128, I believe you said, is based on the top step.
Correct. That's the top step on the salary schedule, yes.
So that would be the maximum, but it doesn't have a number for benefits. So I saw in another, after we talked, I saw in another report that we're using the figure of 46% for benefits. So it is, the fiscal impact is 128,000 plus maximum 274 plus 48% of that for benefits. So I wanted to get that correction made on before we voted on it.
So that would be approximately 185,000.
Yeah, I didn't do a calculation.
Can I speak to this for just 1 second? While that is the top step in the salary range, we generally don't bring in a person at step 10 because that wouldn't allow them. I mean, someone could negotiate that, but we generally don't bring in somebody at that high of a step because it wouldn't allow them any room for growth. So typically, the people don't come in over the 5th or 6th step of the salary range.
Yeah. So there's no kind of automatic thing, like if somebody's been around for 5 years doing branch management for 5 years, they're not automatically brought in any particular way here. There's a negotiation that's involved.
These are unrepresented. This group of orange, they're unrepresented. The problem is with CalPERS, you have to list the classification and the steps. So if someone gets to retire, they have to be represented on the pay steps and on the salary scale. So there's no figure. We have some personnel rules that we're working on refining, but these are unrepresented. In the represented, which are MOU, there are rules and regulations about how people are promoted and what you have to give them a minimum of 5% for promotion or no less than a certain step in the salary range. But for the unrepresented, you have to at least put them at a place in a step. So you can't just say, I'm going to give you $2 and it has to be on a step in the scale.
Right,
so,
but that is the negotiation part.
Well, yes, I mean, we are a public sector agency, so there is limited amount when you're being promoted. But generally, you just want to you just need to have your steps all listed out and the titles and the salaries all listed on your steps. So it's highly unlikely that someone's going to come in at step 10.
Right. Well, just in terms of what our job is to approve the fiscal impact, and so it was put on here the maximum, so we would know what the maximum fiscal impact is, but it didn't include the benefits, which is another big chunk.
Well, that's true, but you also, because you don't know what plan somebody's going to pick, if they're going to have family or not family, so you could budget it all at the maximum, highest plan, highest, PERS impact and highest everything, and then it would always be less than that.
Right, but this didn't have anything in there for benefits. That's my point. So it said the annual salary maximum is this, and then it doesn't have, and that's the category is fiscal impact. So
true,
there's a more significant fiscal impact.
Yes, and one of the things, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Commissioner, but one of the things that we're doing with our awesome HRIS system is that the new HRIS systems that we are evaluating that we looked at today, is that we will be able to plug some of these figures in there and be able to get these great costs so that we can determine when we're putting all these figures into the budget that we can give you this information. So
I just wanted to get that clarified before we voted on it, just for the record.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions about this item?
Yes.
Commissioner May.
I'm interested on page 17, the qualifications for division manager, branches, and patron services. In qualifications, it's not required that there's an MLIS on this particular position. Am I reading that correctly? It says any combination of training. So basically, someone who was the division manager on branches and patron services could be hired who doesn't have an MLIS? It says any typical way to obtain this knowledge and abilities would be. It's not a requirement. It's a typical way to do it would be an MLIS. But
or an MLS or an MSLS.
But it said it doesn't
or
say
university and 6 years of experience. So there's a variety of options there.
But what I'm reading is there's also an option that a person in charge of the division management, branches, and patron services could be hired without an MLIS. Is that the way this is written?
Absolutely.
I don't know that. Okay.
That is what that states. So basically, you have somebody who's the department, I believe, of history and genealogy that may not have the MLIS or something like that, but is 15 years of managing branches, and that person is qualified and confident of doing all the functions. And to say that that person may not meet the minimum qualifications, you might have a challenge to say that they may not be capable of doing the position. So when you're doing when you're looking for the best qualified candidate, you really want to be able to make sure that they have the requisite, because sometimes education experience can be substituted for education. If you have 87 years of life experience of doing the job, and that you might not have that piece of paper in your hand, you're going to be hard pressed to say that that person can't do it. There's Griggs versus Duke that showed that was education can always it can be a discriminatory thing. But we all several people reviewed these job descriptions and came up and signed off on them. So including the branch managers. So if there's challenges with these, then I'm happy to take it back to the table. So.
Okay, I just I trust staff in making decisions on this, but it just seems to me that a bottom line would be to have a MLIS. It's just in that position particularly, because you're overseeing branch managers, and anyway, that's
right. I understand completely what you're saying.
Okay. I'm not getting a lot of echoes from other commissioners.
Well, are the branch managers required to have an MLIS? They are, aren't they, the branch managers? And your point is, this person is overseeing branch managers with potentially a lesser degree?
I'd have to look at the library and job description, but I believe so.
Reading this, so it says, so an MLIS, an MLS, or a MSLS, and 6 years of experience as a professional librarian. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure, I don't know the difference between those three different degrees, but one of them is required in addition to 6 years of experience as a professional librarian, 3 of which include management or supervisory experience. So I'm not sure what
I'm not talking about that paragraph. I'm talking about the paragraph above it that says a typical way to obtain this knowledge and abilities would be. So, so that paragraph is just being given as a
example,
a guideline, but it's not a requirement.
Right. But it would be, I think I don't know, but I think it would take a lot to deviate from some of those qualifications and just say, oh, we're a manager at Boeing, so you're in. I'm just saying that practically, I think it would be difficult to go around that completely. Commissioner Hauser.
I'm a lawyer, been a lawyer for 4 decades. Law school didn't teach me anything that I do now. I'm perfectly happy with this. I think it's perfectly appropriate. People can learn, they do learn. I certainly learned on the job. And I don't have a problem at all with it. I think it's sensible.
Okay.
Right. Okay, moving on. So are there any other concerns about item 8.2.3? Seeing no other concerns about this item, and we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have one absent from the voting. Aye. Okay. It's unanimous. All right, so that takes us to 8.3. The revised. Okay. A motion for 8.3 from Commissioner Garcia.
Second.
I'll second. Commissioner Hauser seconds. Okay. And I don't recall who wanted to discuss this item. Was it you, Commissioner May?
It was me.
All right. So what are your questions or comments?
Okay, this is a covered position, so it's an SIEU position. But it is in the Human Resources Department. And so it is not a confidential position?
No, in order to be a confidential position under PEARL, which is the Public Employee Relations Law, there are these several tests that have to be met with relations to negotiations. And why are you laughing? It's okay. It's just several questions or tests that have to be met under the PEARL law. And we received several levels of pushback from the SEIU labor relations rep, and so I just, you have to give and take on certain things, and so they just won't be involved in the confidential nature of the discussions of gathering information for labor relations negotiations. So confidential with regards to keeping information private and confidential versus confidential and labor relations negotiations are two different things.
Okay.
So,
all right, that's the only question I have.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any other comments, questions? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, unanimously passes. Approved. So 8.4, thank you.
Oh, 4?
Oh, I'm sorry, 8.5.
Okay.
Blanket purchase order for the Roanoke Park headquarters. And was that you, Commissioner Garcia?
Should be a motion to discuss it, because 8.5, I highly recommend, since we don't have any information on what the $300,000 is going to be spent on, that it come back to us or through the Finance Committee with a few more specifics than just a blanket purchase order for Roanoke Park. And that's my suggestion.
I'd like to just step in and comment that I believe the reason is to hopefully expedite the process. I think this money was already budgeted for the things it's going to be used for, but it's already been delayed not significantly perhaps, but the whole process has been delayed for a variety of reasons, and to then come back to us every time they need to make a purchase, I think it's cumbersome, but Ken,
I agree.
The floor is yours.
I agree. This was approved in the budget. This is a way to that you approve it under our current purchasing policy so we can move forward. A good example is not only with this, but with the next one at the Northwest branch. We can tell you in general items what this will cover, but for instance, the furniture for the Roanoke Park move. We got the final quote well after the packet was sent to you all. It's for a little over $200,000, Right now, if we order it tomorrow, it won't be here until mid-January. If if you want to see every last detail that this covers, then things will slow down significantly. It has been approved in the budget already, and it's just difficult to do. It's the same way with the Northwest project. Once it's finalized, the plans are finalized, there's going to be a lot of shelving and furniture to be purchased. If we aren't able to pull the trigger quickly, if we have to wait for a month to come back here and get it okayed, that will delay the project by another month because of the lead time to get this stuff delivered. So,
thank you, Ken. I appreciate that. Am I the only commissioner? I would have appreciated a line, this has already been approved, this is for furniture, this is for something else, rather than just a blanket, and I may be the only one that feels that way. The other question I have, and again, I may have the only question of this, is what's the matter with the old furniture, and why are we buying $200,000 worth of new furniture?
Well, we're moving people down there, and then we're backfilling with all the stuff that we have here with more staff.
So other staff will use the furniture that you left.
Sure.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And it does say on here that the expense for this project were included in the approved budget. So,
other comments or questions? Commissioner McKenzie?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I understand the point of approving a blanket thing. I also just feel really uncomfortable about it because we don't really have the specifics. The truck one is great, all this documentation, feel real comfortable as a appointee public servant to vote on that. I know we passed the budget, big in general numbers for the refresh and for the Runner Park. I don't remember it being specific for Runner Park, but I just feel, let me back up. I think one of our problems, and I talked to your interim director about this today, I think we need to relook at our cutoffs for our agendas because we're running into timing issues about that. I feel that we have a policy that the director is supposed to sign off on up to 50,000, and we're supposed to. If that's the limit, I feel like we're discarding our whole policy by doing a blanket. These are huge blanket, purchase orders, and it's like some sort of structural problem in the way we're doing our business is at least part of that.
Well, the computers and the truck are totally different from projects that are going on, and we're bumping up against deadlines, we're bumping up against a lot of things. That's just the way projects go. I agree it's cumbersome that line is in our purchasing policy, that something that's already been approved by the commission needs to come back to you. It's almost unworkable. The lengthening of the deadline will help a little bit, but it certainly won't help on most of the stuff. And these projects, you're always bumping up against deadlines, and then when you get the quotes and things like that, you have to move quickly, or it'll delay the project, which will cost more money, or it will cost more money because we have to try to expedite the equipment to get it here to meet this project schedule. So, when you pass the budget, you give the staff to make it work, and that's what we're doing. We aren't trying to pull anything. We're just trying to make it work.
If I could just interject, the deadline for the agenda is actually something that the commission requested some time ago because we felt like we didn't get the agendas and the supporting documents in time to read them and grasp them before the meeting. So that's why we have this, 2 weeks ahead of time before the commission meeting, essentially, for all of them to be done. Whether you change that or not, you're always going to run into problems with deadlines at some point. I'm just wondering if the commission would like to see the list after the fact. If we approve a blanket purchase order and then after the fact we see all the things that were purchased. I don't know how feasible that is, or if that would reassure the commission as to how money is being spent. But again, it is budgeted money, and
it's something that we
keep. Situation that you do that often.
No, and it's something that we keep track of. I mean, if we go back to the Cloverdale project, the thing that you did there is you authorized the county to run the project and spend a whole bunch of money, and you didn't see all the detail until after the project was done, and then we put a little spreadsheet together showing what that consisted of. So, I mean, we keep track of it daily, weekly.
We've also done these blanket purchase orders in the past. This isn't like the very first time that we've been asked to do this, because I remember the last few years that's. Well, we did a blanket purchase order for the refreshes. We did a blanket. It was $300,000.
Cloverdale was a little over 300,
exactly.
If I remember.
Yeah,
right.
And it was just we just want you to authorize the expenditure of this money in the next budget. It was actually a carryover from the previous budget that we said okay. So, but maybe after the fact, in this situation with the barriers that the library management has run up against in some of the vendors for the changes to the building and the furniture, it's been difficult.
It's a moving target, and the same thing will happen with Northwest and Petaluma next year. It's just the nature of big projects. You're always bumping up against the deadlines, whether they're with getting permits from the city or all this kind of stuff, or purchase orders to big vendors. It's the nature of projects, at least all of them that I've worked on in the past.
I'd like to make a comment, and that is that I'm perfectly comfortable with the blanket purchase orders, and depending where these funds come from, I don't think that I, as a commissioner, need to see how this money was spent, but perhaps the Measure Y Oversight Committee, that might be a role for them to see, depending on which pot of money these things came out of. So are we spending the money appropriately? Well, with Measure Y dollars, that's what the Measure Y Oversight Committee does. So I'm perfectly comfortable with this since we have budgeted the funds. One of the things we're looking at as a commission is we want to do big projects.
Right.
That's one of the reasons we passed the measure, was so that we could do big projects, and that we've hired sufficient staff in order to manage those. So I'm perfectly happy with these, especially since they've been budgeted already, and they seem to be moving in the direction that the commission wants the library to move in.
But as perhaps an exercise, perhaps the commission could see what it covers after the fact. And I agree with Commissioner Ebright. The Measure Y Oversight Committee may be interested also in seeing how money was spent, because I believe some of this money is Measure Y money.
Yes, it all is.
Yeah.
It would have helped me if you would have said already approved in the budget or something like that. That would have helped just me. And secondly, it would also help if it was seen by the Y Committee and the Finance Committee, and then they've reviewed it.
Well, I think the Y Committee is all about after the fact. They aren't approving stuff ahead of time. They're looking at things that have been spent and making sure that it was in the expenditure plan. They aren't about approving anything. The commission approves the budget and where it's spent.
They could comment certainly on what the funds are. That's why they're there, is to comment and to look at it, right?
Well, and I'm sure they will. They've asked a lot of questions already, but they meet quarterly. Right.
As we go through with these great, wonderful projects, just realize that the disaster that we have will impact the money that we have in the future.
I don't doubt that.
Okay.
Tom has a question.
Helena?
Yes. Oh, Commissioner Hauser.
Being on the Finance Committee, having gone through this discussion, having understanding the issues of trying to order the stuff and everything, I don't see any way of getting around this. The other thing is, if we have a procedure that says if it's over 50,000, it's got to come back here. My thought is that was a procedure that was created when we were poor and we weren't spending $50,000 on anything. And now we're spending $300,000 on something that I don't think I have the capacity to say, no, you shouldn't get that table, you should get this table and all that kind of stuff. We have to let the staff within a budget say, this is the furnishings for the place. Having said all that, I'd like to move approval of, I think it's 8.5.
Okay, another discussion, if you don't mind.
Commissioner
I think we
I mean,
can discuss.
haven't we already?
Motion.
We've already have a motion.
We already have a motion.
No, we don't have a
second,
motion. We never had a motion.
I'll second it.
Yeah.
So who made the motion? Who made the
Now you
motion?
can have discussion.
I just have one comment about looking ahead. I'm in favor of all this. Looking ahead in the next budget, when you're going to be giving us the Petaluma proposal, that if it were presented in a way of we want to spend $500,000 on this, roughly it's going to be X, Y, Z expenditures. Just so I think what you're hearing is our sense of responsibility as appointees to public funds. And just if we have a broad idea, I'm fine here, but
I appreciate that. Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner McKenzie.
Yes, that's exactly what I tried to say, is that, we're basically authorizing against our own policy. Our policy says if it's more than 50,000, the commission has to approve it. We have general estimated numbers in the budget. We passed the general estimated budget number, the budget, but we haven't looked at anything specifically. So number one, we need to change our policy a little bit that says if it's a project, we can do whatever. I would just feel a lot more comfortable if we were consistent with our own policy. So I would suggest that, and I would also suggest that at a minimum, we look at the detail of this once we have all the bills that come in that match the purchase order. At minimum, it's our responsibility to look at that.
Yeah, and the blanket purchase order also gives us a mechanism that tracks all of that, because we code it all against this blanket purchase order, and in the office we can just sit there and point to all the invoices that have come in against it. So it's also a tracking mechanism.
So by sometime in January, all of these funds will have been spent on this project.
I hope so.
Okay. All right. So the commission will
Project done.
the commission will be happy to see that documentation in February. But perhaps you'd like to, in your spare time, come up with a suggestion for the Finance Committee to look at the current policy and looking at reworking that.
Yeah, it is. It's just kind of difficult to live up to in reality. I mean, it looks good when it's there, but when you're really trying to make things work.
Okay. Well, we could certainly modify our policy to say it's 50,000, but if it's a big project, we have a different policy, and then we have a policy.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. But I'm not sure if you want to stay up here next.
I think we have to have a vote.
Yes, we're going to have a vote. So I don't recall who made the motion on this. Tom Hauser and Tim May seconded it. And all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we have Commissioner Neff on record as being opposed to approving this. So that takes us to item 8.6, authorize blanket purchase order for the Northwest Refresh. Commissioner Hauser is making the motion.
I second.
And Commissioner Heavenridge seconds it. And now we have a moment for discussion. And who would like to lead off with their concerns about this?
I think it's the same discussion we just had. If anybody else wants to.
We need to change the policy then.
Right.
Okay. All right, so are we going to have discussion? Any comments, or shall we have a vote on this?
Well, we're running up to the same deadline problem for this as the Runner Park in terms of all the expenses coming in.
Will be. Dave can speak a little bit more to that.
Well, the big issue is how long it takes to get stuff, like shelving. If we place the order tomorrow, it's 16 to 17 weeks before you can get it. So it's really hard to get. So we're in the process of getting the quote like this week. So we'd like to place the order as soon as we can once we get the quote. So we can't really forecast that a month by the 20th without the quote. So same with the furnishing for Runner Park. We got the final quote today. So I can't get that into the packet for you to see on when it arrives on the day.
Well, when we approved this $300,000 at some earlier point in time, there had to have been some estimates, broken down estimates, like shelving this,
sure,
da-da-da-da-da-da.
And I could have added those details
right.
in here had I known you'd want it that way.
Right. I think at minimum, just because we are responsible
sure.
for this money, that besides changing our policy, we have at least as much detail as possible based on the budget estimates that we had attached to these items.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you.
And you're welcome. There was an earlier question about the temporary space for
Northwest.
If everybody knows where Range and Guerneville Road are,
yes,
there's a shopping center there.
Yeah.
Inside that shopping center, there's a little 1,500 square foot area in the middle of that shopping center by Bank of the West, I believe. It'll be on that would be the northwest corner. I think a Bank of the West is right there on the exact corner, and then the shopping mall behind it will have a location there with an external book drop, a restroom for staff.
Do we have a rental estimate on that?
Rental is $3,000 a month.
And that's part of this $300,000?
Well, some of that could be. This was mainly for purchases over $50,000. Mainly. So we're going to have a big furnishing again, another furniture order.
Okay, now I'm lost. Are you saying that? We're on the
some of the items that we purchase for the project will fall under our normal rules of spending money, and there'd be no need to waste your time showing you those until like the end of the project and you see like a project report on it. The big ticket items is what the blanket's for. Shelving over 50,000. You know, it's about 90,000 for shelving. Furnishing is probably another 150. I have no idea. We haven't even gotten that close yet.
Oops.
So that's the bulk of it right there.
So what are we estimating is the total cost of the Northwest Refresh then?
That's not the total cost. No, that's about half of what we budgeted for that.
We're budgeting about $600,000 for the refresh. I'm going to have to get my old budget out because I don't remember that.
And especially for Northwest too, you know, Vicky's also on here as well in case there's an IT big purchase too, like for new equipment that comes up. Like if we have these deadlines are really, you know, we don't know about them until they're, you know, 2 days away from your packets due. And
well, the library computer refresh project had a lot of detail, so it wasn't.
Right.
But anyway, just in general, the next time we have a big purchase order, as much detail to support it as possible would be helpful. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
I had one, Were we able to add any more space? Will we be able to add any more space to the northwest, but from the outside area?
A larger footprint, you mean, for the existing?
Thank
No,
you.
that
I
is.
didn't use the right terminology.
That's okay. We're designing it for further expansion. Is that?
Wow. Okay.
So along those windows areas is pretty open that we could push out if we wanted to make that investment.
Okay. But it's not going to happen.
Not
right now.
In the refresh.
Right. All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right. Did we have a motion?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Commissioner Hauser made the motion. Is that correct?
Right.
And Commissioner Heavenridge seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So, all right, so that takes us to item 8.7, which is the IT purchase order for the library computer refresh.
I'll move.
I'm ready to talk to you about that.
Yeah, we have to move in second.
Okay.
I'll second.
Heavenridge
second.
McKenzie.
I'll give it to me.
Okay.
Commissioner
All
May, go
right,
ahead.
so ask away. What do you want to know? First of all, let me just finish. I did put in there the description of what we're doing and why we're doing it, and we've put this off twice now. We have some rather old staff computers. We have a mixture. What we have done in the past is done this many this time and this many the time before, and now we're reaching a place where we're kind of struggling with some of the applications that staff are using and so forth. So this is why I want to do this. I did put it in the budget for this year when we talked about this last April. And what we will be able to do is move some monitors and things around for the public and so forth to provide a better experience for the public and to substantially upgrade the public computers while we're doing this.
I just have an information question. What is Optiplex?
Optiplex is the brand of the Dell computer. We did a comparison of HP, Dell, and IBM or Lenovo, and we have come up with the Dell as being our selection for price and footprint and other capabilities. So, Randall.
I wanted to thank you for all the detail and the excruciating detail. I enjoyed it. So you say these are staff computers?
Yeah, they're primarily staff computers.
And they'll be running Windows 10?
Windows 10 Professional. And we're gearing up right now to bring in, at the suggestion of our HR manager and our training coordinator, we're going to be bringing in the same company that's training the public on computers. It's called Language Truck. They'll be teaching classes in Windows 10. We also have lynda.com that they can self-instruct, and we'll be doing the same thing with Office 2016. The Office 2016 will be purchasing through TechSoup, which is, it'll cost us around $55 per seat versus over $290 per seat if we bought it retail. So we really are finding ways to economize and do this, but we've put this off time and time again, and it's in the same way that we did our project last year with the infrastructure, with all of the switches and routers. We've got to get this up to speed as well.
Commissioner McKenzie.
Two questions. One, I was wondering what happens to the old computers and how old they indeed are. And secondly, whether all of the branches are getting new ones. Will there be?
All of the branches, all the staff we've slated all staff to receive new computers. The old computers, quote unquote old, we will pull those out from staff. Where we can, we'll refurbish and add RAM, and then clean them up and wipe the hard drives. And in many cases, we'll be able to move those out into the public use areas, which is our typical pattern of behavior. We'll be doing some things with refreshing the monitors. So, for example, when we reopen the Northwest facility after the refresh, we'll be putting in the refreshed computers with big monitors for the public. We've been asked about that, by the way, by the public specifically. And in some cases, we have the space for the larger footprint monitors. And some of the older staff computers have bigger monitors, which will go out into the public areas. So we're just basically going to be doing some upgrades to the public PCs by adding RAM and so forth, and making them more capable of handling more transactions and things like that. Most of those are strictly internet computers, the public computers, and people are using those to a limited degree to work on resumes. So we have Office installed on those, and spreadsheets and things like that, Excel and so forth. So we'll upgrade that stuff as well as we're doing this.
So is this going to result in more public computers or
in some cases, Barbara, where there's room, it can result in more public computers. But I'm going to tell you right now, our statistics are showing that more is really not that big a deal, because our public computer usage is dropping because we have Wi-Fi and more people are coming in with their iPad or other device. So then
there are old computers, so the staff's replaced, they go out to the public. The old public ones are going where?
Well, the public ones, we recycle everything, and we can talk to you about that. There are recycle programs for these really old ones, and so everything, we have programs at the library that I'll tell you about where kids learn to take apart. Randall knows about these, where we have, kids taking apart the computers and learning about the guts of them and so forth. And so, like I said, we recycle everything, and we even recycle after they tear them apart. So, they really get totally used.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Other questions that you might have?
Okay.
It's a big thing.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for that. So we have a motion, correct?
We do.
And a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, that's unanimous, and that takes us to the last but not least, 8.8.
So moved.
Second.
So that is Commissioner Garcia and Commissioner May. Comments or questions, concerns?
I pulled that for comment. One is that I was really pleased with all the documentation, and secondly, I was really pleased with the fact that we were able to get this locally, the sales tax going locally, and it was, I believe, a Cotati company, the truck sales in Cotati, although the sales tax is run as Santa Rosa. So I was really pleased about that, and also pleased about the potential of this grant for hybrid zero emission in terms of energy savings. So I want to compliment the staff who worked on that. It was very nicely done. Thank you.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have one absence. Oh, no, all unanimous. All right, so thank you all. And now that takes us to item 11.1. adjourn the meeting in honor of Kyo Okazaki. And I think we all want to congratulate Kyo, but we will miss her terribly. And I've asked Commissioner May to read.
First of all, I'd like to move that we do that. So I'll move it.
Oh, you move it, I'll second it.
All right. Resolution to adjourn November 6, 2017 meeting of the Sonoma County Library Commission in Kyo Okazaki. Whereas Kyo Okazaki first stepped into Petaluma County Library in 1975, and in her 41 years of tenure, she has observed and participated in the sea change of public library services to our community. And whereas during her service as a children's librarian, Kyo touched the lives of a generation of children and families of Central Santa Rosa and Petaluma. And whereas Kyo also served as a branch manager at the Petaluma Library for over 20 years, where she thrived as the leader and voice of the local community library. And whereas during Kyo's transfer to the administration at the Central Library, her Petaluma staff and patrons wondered what they would do without her. To help them cope without her, the Petaluma staff wore bracelets that said, WWKD, what would Kyo do? They still ask each other that question to this day during difficult situations. And whereas Kyo has always been a champion of building strong community partnerships and is an inspiration to many, she remains actively involved in various services and volunteer groups and community organizations. She continues to teach Japanese at the Santa Rosa Junior College, a service she's provided to the community for many years. And whereas Kyo has been the division manager of public services for the last 11 years, during which time she has shepherded branch staff and services through many difficult changes, always with her trademark grace and kindness. We now, therefore, be it resolved by the Sonoma County Library Commission that the members of the Sonoma County Library Commission hereby express their most heartfelt gratitude to Kyo Okazaki and honor her on this day for her many contributions to the Sonoma County Library and through that work to the people of Sonoma County. That when the Commission adjourns this day, it does so in honor and appreciation to Kyo Okazaki.
Thank you very much. And that takes us to item 12.
That's me.
Oh, I'm sorry, we have to vote.
Okay.
I think it's unanimous, but let's take a formal vote anyway. We have a motion on the floor, and all in favor?
Absolutely, yes.
Yay.
Opposed? It's unanimous approval. All right, so lab appointments, and I would like to ask Randall if you would like to make the motion on this.
Okay, I move by resolution that the Sonoma County Library Commission appoint Sarah Baker as the youth member position for the Wenzer Library Advisory Board for a term ending on June 30th, 2019.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous approval. And so, are there items to include in the commission notes?
Wouldn't we mention the honor for Kyo?
Yes.
And then the expansion of library hours and the pay during library emergency?
Probably an item about the emergency and how it was handled and what happened and how long we were closed. And
Okay. Did you hear all of those, Jane? Great. Thank you.
Would we want to mention our 3 financial priorities?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Would we want to mention our 3 priorities?
Oh, okay.
Under the upcoming budget, long-term liabilities, facilities, and adding hours?
Yes, so the Commission's budget priorities. All right, and anything else?
maybe we could put in there if we get the those conversations around the table scheduled.
It's
Together at the table?
Thank you. Together at the table conversations coming up. That's great. All right. So items for the next agenda. The staff mentioned that Jaylene will be giving a report on the state library report and a strategic plan update from the OMT.
Any more detail on Roseland? I'd like to see that agendized every time if we can, if we know more about that. That's one. And the other thing, I really would like us to look at this deadline that we have for agendas. I talked a little bit to our interim director this afternoon that at least the one city council that I'm familiar with, they meet on Tuesdays and they get their agendas the Thursday before, which gives them, a long weekend to read it. I think that it would really help a lot of things if we, there's nothing, no reason that we need to get our agendas and our packets a week before. And I think,
we can discuss that, but I think the commission pushed for that for a long time.
Well, that's because there were some screw-ups early on, but that was 3 years ago. And anyway, I would just like to agendize it for discussion, and I'd like to hear from staff about whether it would work better if we changed it a little bit.
All right.
There's going to be an update on leases, or the subcommittee that was going to look at leases and communication with the cities.
I think the finance committee is going to be looking at
That's
leases.
something the finance committee is going to do.
Is that correct?
And then we were going to also look at the policy of putting up, not just doing $50,000 or whatever it is for approval, but increasing.
Right. I'm going to agendize that for finance committee, and then we'll bring it back.
Okay, that'll be on. Okay. Right.
Yeah, I think that should come to us from the finance committee. Commissioner Hauser, did you have something? All right. Anybody else? All right. It is about 8 after 9. It's 9:07. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for your patience and for your participation. And we'll adjourn this meeting at 8:09. Our next regular meeting is Monday, December 4th at 6:30 p.m. here in the Santa Rosa City Chambers.